Hey there everyone, Jonathan Wolf with U-Time Coaching, and today's video has to do with the fact that kids are spending so much more time at home and parents are spending so much more time with them given everything that's been happening over the previous months with COVID-19 and the social isolation and quarantining, that parents are seeing a side of their kids and getting a perspective about their kids that they may not have had before. Granted, over the summer, parents tend to see their kids more frequently because of school being out, but this is a very special time. And so some issues that kids may be having that parents don't tend to see as much, they're seeing some of these symptoms because they're just spending more time with them in a variety of settings. And so these symptoms of anxiety, depression, learning issues and challenges, social issues are coming out, and parents have more of an opportunity to see them and also to address them. But being able to recognize it for what it is and see it and be aware of it is the first step for a parent. So I've sat in on a lot of IEP meetings and meetings with teachers that are obviously through Zoom. And there's just still this mass confusion about whether or not certain school systems are going back in the fall. And each week you hear of new places that are saying and declaring that they're either not going back at all in person, or they're having some hybrid system. But either way, I think we're headed towards a fall where you're going to have a lot more kind of hands-on time with your kids. And so one kind of subset of parents that are seeing a lot of these symptoms and dealing with a lot of this stuff at home, which is going to require a lot more patience and a lot more outside support as well, are parents of kids that have ADHD. Now, this video is really just going to jump right into what is at the core of ADHD, so you can identify what these challenges are, why they may be happening, but also to know that this is something to expect. Okay, so at the core ADHD, there are really three pieces. All right, and all of these don't need to, I'm sure you're going to hear these and say, yeah, I agree with all of them. But they're varying degrees for varying cases and individuals. But the three things that come at the core of ADHD, one is chronic procrastination. All right, so we're not just talking about pushing something off here or there, or being late in assignment here or there. We're talking about chronic. We're talking about habitual, things that happen all the time. It's almost predictable that it can happen. So we have the chronic procrastination. We also have some degree of pretty intense disorganization. All right, and organization is an executive functioning skill, so it kind of makes sense why this would be in here, but disorganization, we'll get a little more into that. And the third thing that typically follows is some type of sleep issue, sleep problems. Specifically just straight up poor sleep, getting to bed, getting the amount of hours and continuous sleep, and then the impact that it has on the day. So those are the three things: chronic procrastination, disorganization, and poor sleep. So to kind of look into each of those, the procrastination, there's certain reasons why this may happen, and maybe it can give you a clue how to better help and support your kid. So one thing to think of is they may be overwhelmed by the amount of effort they think that a certain task is going to take. Usually when this happens, it's either a complete distortion of what it's actually going to take, or it's actually that the task has multiple steps and that it absolutely needs to be broken down into a small enough step, step one, where the kid is not overwhelmed to do step one. All right, so really breaking it down so it's more comfortable, but really it's driven by, the procrastination is driven by the feeling of being overwhelmed by the amount of effort they think it's going to take. Another area kind of involves time management is they usually overestimate the amount of time that something is going, overestimate the amount of time the amount of time they have left on a task. And so they might think that they can get away with pushing it off, which also kind of comes hand in hand and is tag teamed by how they usually underestimate how much time something's going to take. Okay, so that's kind of a deadly combo. So there's a distortion in how they estimate how much time something's going to take, how much time they have left to do something. And so this makes it pretty easy for impulsive decision making to jump in. And another thing might have to do with the fact that sometimes with ADHD you can have these this perfectionism that goes on. And so they may think that in order for me to get started, in order for me to do this the right way, they need to do it in a very specific order, in a very specific way. They need to feel a certain way to get started. And the fact is that not all lights are going to turn green at the same time. But that is one of the things that may be holding them back. Okay, so that's the procrastination piece of it. The disorganization, that can come in a lot of forms. So that can be environmental. So you can look at their the black hole, also known as their backpack, or any bag, gym bag, a sports bag, and you can see the disorganization there. It could be their room, and it being messy, them not spending too much time cleaning it, the bed not being made. And we're not talking about being super clean. We're just talking about messiness or being disorganized. Or you can even look at their desk if they have one. And you can get a gist for the environmental disorganization. It could be impacted by a tough time regulating emotions. So when someone's stressed, when someone's anxious, then it could be very tough for them to organize their thoughts, organize and plan mentally. This is why getting it down on paper is also very helpful with the organization. Using calendars, using planners is very helpful with planning and organization because it helps you get stuff out of your mind. And once it's on paper, it's more concrete. You can look at it and make adjustments. But unfortunately, if someone's stressed or is in an emotional state that is very disorienting mentally and can kind of get them overwhelmed with their thoughts, then most of the thoughts just stay up there. So getting them out is pretty important, but just know that their emotional state and their tough time regulating emotions can affect the disorganization and the mental component to it. Also, the people with ADHD typically have trouble planning and prioritizing things. So this sometimes is impacted by impulsivity and more importantly, following through with the plan. And so they could get very distracted and run away with a different storyline or the firework that goes off. But they typically have trouble not only following through with the plan, but setting up a realistic plan and prioritizing that in the first place. So this all can contribute to the disorganization. And the poor sleep, that could be a multitude of things, okay? And one typically affects the next thing. So you have things like medication. If they're on some type of stimulant, then obviously what time of day they take it, if they're taking too much of it. A lot of people, they take it and they also drink things that have caffeine and a lot of sugar in them. So you got to look at the intake of whatever stimulant is being prescribed, and then stimulants that are also being taken outside of that, whether it's coffee or it's a Red Bull, some other type of energy drink, even tea. Now, there's also things like video games. So poor sleep, most people know that their kids play a ton of video games, watch a ton of TV. They, on Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, they're on their devices. Not even going off the basis of the blue light keeping you awake, but think more in terms of it's keeping your brain active. And video games and a lot of these apps are developed to give your kid and to give any individual short bursts of dopamine. And so that's a great reinforcer to keep doing it. And so literally video games are built for this. So it's no wonder why kids and adults kind of get hooked into this and spend hours and hours doing it, because you just keep on getting these bursts of dopamine, which is a lot more fun than homework or getting a job. So keep in mind that regulating these things, using these things as rewards, doing, first work, then play, and prioritizing things that way, that if you do 30 minutes of this, then I'll give you 30 minutes of that. Whatever you come up with, the order and sequence is important because they can easily get hooked in and it can affect their sleep. The other thing is with ADHD, you have kids that typically have a more sensitive stress response. And the interesting thing with kids is that when and adolescents and teenagers and young adults is that usually the sleep response, if the sleep problems, if they're having trouble getting to sleep and staying to sleep, usually that's even a sign that they're overtired. because when they become overtired, they get into a stressful state, and the stressful state releases cortisol, which tells you to stay awake. So they might be a sign that they're actually overtired if they're fighting going to bed. Trying to reset through an early night of sleep, because sometimes you need to reach that cumulative sleep deprivation to get to that point where you can't fight it anymore, and taking naps, where it's a cumulative and not necessarily continuous sleep. So you have that, and you also have procrastination on tasks. So when someone pushes off an assignment, a project, reading, sometimes they might stay up late so they can finish it. So procrastination can lead to sleep problems as well. So those are the three main areas. You have the disorganization, poor sleep, and chronic procrastination at the core of ADHD. So hopefully look at some of these things and go into this school year predicting that these are going to be challenges and set up some boundaries around them. You can check out our website, utimecoach.com, and the blogs that we have, and our social media, which gives a lot of good resources on how to do this. And at the end of the day, if you have any questions, shoot an email over to info@utimecoach.com, and I'd love to answer it for you. Okay, well, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon.